and they said there are some, like they're basically speculating that something is good about it, but the problem is that you're omitting facts at that point. Even if you're saying, yeah, it's, there's some good aspects to it, but you're not explaining it, that means you're pushing for the negative narrative. So now you're just omitting facts that many people don't even know about because they never even experienced playing video games, period. Now this pandemic came out, how is the AC one of the most played games out there? You know what I mean? Like people didn't even give it a chance, and now they're giving a chance and like, oh, this is actually fantastic. And then now they're playing games like this. I've seen old people play games like WoW like 2, 3 years ago, and they're like, yo, this is
Wow.
fantastic and all this shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like to see this, to see that like elders will be able to get a connection with people that they never had before, and they can do this through video games. Can you imagine? Like right now, I'll give you an example. Right now, there's someone that I spoke to who works at a nursing home. They can only allow family to connect with their family members in that nursing home through like digital, right? Like through digital networking. So you can't really. So like imagine someone of that age who's always trying to connect with someone. Well, you got video games there that literally, with the push of a button, you're socially connected to everyone. You don't even have to worry about like Facebook or arguments stuff like that. You're doing something that's a hobby together with someone else, and that just builds positivity on its own, right?
For sure.
That's why for me, I took the community serious in like the last 10 years, and I for fighting games specifically. So I can see I actually even noted the good and the bad through this community, what can be done better for video games and what shouldn't be done at all, playing video games or emulating the stuff that you see in video games. So it's just an unexplored situation in my opinion. So I don't think World Health Organization is fully aware of what they're doing, but at the same time, at least if they can, start looking into it more without using the pandemic as a fucking crux, okay, I can respect that. But until then, I just think that they're omitting facts. That's it.
I
Well,
feel that.
I feel like,
Um.
sorry.
Oh no, no. I was gonna say like, oh, Mike and Hernani's here. Y'all talk. So
What up?
bunch. Welcome.
Yeah.
That was good.
What we're talking about though, like we
So,
two articles. 2017, who pretty much was trying to fight to classify gaming as a disorder or under addictive disorders, and then now during the pandemic, they're throwing out hashtags and saying you should be gaming because it's positive for your anxiety, blah blah blah. So we're talking about that discrepancy or that disparity or that, not even just that, like that change in tone out of who. Go for it, Mike and Hernani. Welcome.
yeah. So what he was saying earlier before, I like it makes, I totally agree with it. And then I'm just gonna come from like a healthcare perspective, right? Like even like with mental illness and stuff like that, like it's still a very like underestimated and how should I say this? Studied kind of sector of healthcare in general, right? Like half of the medications that we give patients that are anybody with a bipolar disorder or kind of like a behavioral disorder, a lot of them will lump it up into like you have an antisocial personality trait or a bunch of things like this, and a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists will lump them up because at the same time they can't explain exactly why their behavior is such a way, and they'll treat you with these type of drugs that for some reason works, but in reality they don't know how it actually works. So like even with this like article and stuff like that, like you're right, they don't look at the positive outcome of the studies that like gaming will provide you. And I feel like with anybody who understands like getting a grant for like a research or whatever, right? If majority says, hey, gaming is bad, and like I think that this is like a stereotypical of like gamers are it's an addiction, right? They're going to study that as a biased information of, is this actually an addiction? And sure, the traits are quite similar to some extent, but then you're saying that there's community involved, there's social aspects involved, and there's a lot of pros that can kind of come from gaming or from just going into playing video games, right? And I think that aspect was never explored because of the fact that they were never given a reason to until now, right?
And if I may add one more point, I want to give you guys an example of why I think people don't really explore this on a psychological level. Or there are players in the FGC fighting game community that exhibit toxic behaviors, but in a way where it's acceptable by many people. And it's like you look at it, at first hand, let's say 10 years ago, all right? Everyone's joking around, whatever. That's a different time. I get it. As we start to progress, you start to see selective morality. You start to see um, people who use their platforms to, and it's not even like it's to better themselves, but it's more so it's a lot of it's like I don't want to say this, but it's like clout. Like a lot of it is built on
Yeah.
clout, and that's
Mhm.
actually of learned behaviors that are being bled into the community. And I see that reflective with people who appreciate that type of behavior, which is unfortunate, right? You have someone. I'll give you an example, and this example is low tier God. Maybe some of you guys heard that name floating around before on YouTube. He's
Yeah,
a
I heard about
YouTube
it.
personality. He proclaims to be part of the FGC, but then he says he's not part of the FGC. He actually has issues. He actually has issues, but people allowed him to act a certain way for such a long time. He was actually even on national broadcast television, and he actually even went after trans people. He actually, well, not trans people. He actually went after a specific person who was trans, and nothing was done about it,
That's
right?
wild.
Like, right. But keep in mind, the one thing about the FGC, which I respect, is the ability to go to these events without having to, without having to worry about a ban or something like that. Like everyone's not physical, everyone's cool, we can play, awesome. It's open for anyone, right? But this kind of behavior first started with other groups of people, and it led to a certain point now where as soon as another person that he started making fun of who also was trans, that person actually used him as a platform to build on top of what he was doing.
Mhm.
And it didn't seem that way, but you see this kind of shit from time and time again, where he keeps using low tier God as an example, as a means to build his own platform. So it
Mhm.
got to a point where this person even said, clip the broadcast, and said, he jokes sometimes, but this has gone too far. And it's like he's gone too far since day one, right?
Mhm.
But we have so many people who exhibit these learned behaviors that will push for this. So this isn't video games. I know for a fact this isn't off of video games, but because you are good at video games, it boosts your ego and your emotions. So then now you think you're validated regardless of whether you're wrong or right, right? But you
Right.
could say that for anything. If
I
someone wants
feel
to
you.
Yeah.
play poker nonstop, not moderating it whatsoever, and they built that ego, that's a learned behavior using poker as a crutch. So it's
Yeah.
not just video games. So that's why I say World Health Organization hasn't really looked into it. I can't like I actually studied a bit of psychology. So when I see these things happen and I understand that this is a learned behavior, this
I feel
is
you.
the game
Mike,
is the reason why. The game's not the reason at all for this behavior. This person's actually doing this for this behavior to resurface over and over again. It's constant, and it's not just in the fighting game community. It's actually in almost every gaming community. But that's the thing. That's just a bad person. That's a person who is pushing a learned behavior that's unacceptable, or sorry,
I feel that.
unacceptable,
I
right?
feel that. Thank you, man. Mike,
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, what's your opinion on things?
Um, I was just listening to everything everybody had to say. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I agree with what a lot of what Elias said. I think video games is just another platform, and a lot of people haven't studied to it. A lot of people, it's pretty. The gaming community has always been there, but with online gaming, it's just getting larger and larger. And I think to like big news media outlets, I think to the World Health Organization, a lot of attention has been brought towards it.
Mhm.
Um, I feel that too with video games, and when you're whether you're streaming or you're playing with friends or whoever you're with, even though you're having some sense of communication, um, you're also in isolation. There's a difference between you having face-to-face contact with somebody and you being in the comfort of your home, in your favorite chair, whatever, nobody's around you. There's a sense of a level of comfort you get with people, whether you're streaming, you're talking, and yeah, I think with a lot of people too, because you're basically seeing a lot of people's true colors too online.
Right.
Sometimes
Yeah.
Interesting.
a lot of times things people wouldn't be so comfortable saying if they were in a public forum.
Yeah.
They're going to express once they're in the comfort of your own. And I can say for myself, who like I game pretty often. When you're playing a video game, and you could be playing with somebody who's random. The first question, once you start playing with them, it's like, oh, hey, where are you from? Where you live, right? And then even if you're in a face-to-face interaction with somebody you just know, you're kind of looking at them. You're kind of seeing how they move. And don't get me wrong, people still introduce themselves. The questions people will ask you as soon as they meet you online, they're more likely to dig right into you. And I don't mean, let's say that in like a negative way, but they're way more engaging. I mean, there's less reason to be intimidated or less reason to be shy. Um, so I think everything is because there's no immediate repercussions people can see, and there's no, everything is in the comfort of their home. I just think you see like amplified versions of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that guy's a jerk, he was always a jerk.
Yep.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Interesting. So I think like what like Elias and you just got at, I kind of want to maybe dive into more. Kirsten, maybe you want to speak to this if you feel like, if not, like someone else can. But I think there's like an obvious subculture, and with subcultures there's like a social contract that happens of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Right.
And it doesn't seem to be the same thing for like in-person games like soccer, basketball, or just in-person interactions. They're very, very different. The video game subculture allows sometimes negative behavior, or as someone said, moral, like a moral
Selective morality.
moral bending behavior and things
Yeah.
like that. Do you think that the social environment of gaming is a positive thing because it gives a space for engaging, gives a space for people to be maybe themselves more, or a negative thing because people are a little more colorful negatively?
Well, to be honest, it's honestly truly a double-edged sword, and I can relate that back to sports, like you said. So I'm playing ball. I'm playing ball. Let's for my brother, for instance, right? He's played college ball. Some of his friends have played internationally. In the heat of the game, they'll tell me, oh, like you can't guard me, you're trash, you're short, you can't do this, whatever, right?
Right.
In context of playing the game, that's fine.
Right.
In the heat of the moment during the game, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
When I'm playing a game, I'm playing Halo, for example, like, yo, you can't shoot, your grenade's trash, your KD's trash, like, or playing fighting, like, oh, you're open, this is meaty, whatever, I'm hitting you, like, don't block, don't hit a button. There's certain things acceptable, right? But if you bring it back to like the early 2000s, like those Call of Duty lobbies, when it was just like completely cancerous, that's not okay. It was homophobic. It
was bad.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
But again, these are behaviors. Back then, we might have been like people who are my age. I'm 30, so like 12, 13 or whatever. I'm not allowed to swear when my parents are around, but when they're gone, I'm gonna act a fool online, right?
Yeah, you edgy motherfucker. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Like, the new persona.
Feel like you've grown and
Exactly. And again, like some people don't have the brought up seat to talk about like how to manage yourself online, right? How to handle that. Because I was like, I could get heated, I could get toxic if I had to, but I never hit over that threshold.
Right.
So that's because I grew up different, and most Caribbean people probably grew up the same way I did.
Right.
But you can't always train that. So some of these people have never had that training, where it's just like they could go say whatever they want, they could do whatever they want, and they're not going to get heat checked for it or like challenged on that.
It's validity.
I hear that. One thing I'm going to slip in before I let everyone else talk. The gaming spaces have seemed to be a very warm place for the N-word. I don't know what it is. People, I don't know what it is. Because I know like everyone that isn't black is like dying to say it because it's the one thing that like black people still have that you haven't been able to like take. I'm not gonna get into that today. But like like it seems to be a very wild place for that one word. I find it very interesting.